All right, 5 seconds. I'll make that 3 seconds. We're live.
All right.
What's going on, man?
Not much. I've just been home from college. I had a great Christmas. Hope you did too.
I mean,
I'm pretty excited to be here.
I'm going to introduce you to the gang. Saturday Night Rockers, what's going on? Hope everybody had a Merry Christmas. Happy Kwanzaa, which I think started today. Happy Hanukkah. Happy holidays, all of the above, and soon to end this miserable friggin' year called 2020. Well, we are here with a young gentleman who I recently met, was introduced to by his mom. I think that everybody knows. Carrie Stevens. This is Jaxon Stevens, live from California. Now you're in LA right now?
Yeah, I'm in LA.
All right. Live from LA, the other side, the left coast. So what I explained to Jaxon what we do, and he didn't know obviously about us until he'd spoken to his mother, but she had a good idea talking to a 18-year-old, I say kid. Sorry, I don't use that name in a bad way. That's a term of endearment in New York. So, but we want to hear about, especially somebody that's been somewhat exposed to rock and roll his whole life in one way or another. Probably more so than most people, what people would actually probably dream of if they're into rock and roll. But we're going to let you talk about that. But you are very much into, according to what your mother said, the new bands.
Yes.
And that I want to hear from, a guy your age. Also, what your friends are listening to, and what's going on. You're just going into college now, right? You're in the academy, or I think where are you going?
I'm going to Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm doing aviation business.
Okay. So I want to know what are people your age thinking, but let's go start back at the beginning. You're so you're born and raised in California then?
Yeah, born and raised Southern California. Spent basically my whole life here, except probably about the past 2 years. I've split that in between Wisconsin and now Arizona.
Cool. Now, I didn't know you went to military school.
Yeah, I did. I went to a military boarding school for the second half of high school. It was a great experience, for I guess the development of me as a person. In a very short amount of time, I went from being new at the school to being a second lieutenant and having a platoon. I was a platoon leader. I was in charge of half of the middle schoolers at the school, so that was fun. A lot of work.
Cool. See, I mean, I didn't realize she's a little bit of a toughie then. Now, was that the choice of going to school? How did that? You started out in schools just local at home.
Yeah, I was at the public school here. I wasn't really doing well, just in terms of grades.
Mm-hmm.
I was struggling academically, so I needed a change, and that was a change that I needed.
Right.
So, it worked out very well. I went from like a 1.7 GPA to 3.6. So yeah.
Cool. But you're going down a road that again, I don't want to talk about me, but that I wanted to do when I got off the path. But I didn't know any of this about you until you friended me on Facebook, and I'm like, holy crap, this kid's no joke. But we don't want to. We won't skip too quick, but we'll go. Let's start. We'll go to the music.
All right. There's a lot of places I could start.
Honest to God, I don't even know. I've never spoken to someone this young who's been, let's say, disconnected
Mm-hmm.
to, the music itself. Obviously, there's no secret as to the people that your mother knows, and that's what you grew up in, which,
Yep.
We look at it from the outside in, like, wow, cool. But here's the question: someone who's grown up through it, this is just, this is your life. You're normal for you, and
Yeah, that is something that I find it hard to understand myself and how other people view it. Because as you say, like I've grown around up like that my whole life. I remember I must have been 8 or 9 years old on the tour bus of Cinderella. Just things like that. as a kid, you're not really thinking about it. And
Right.
then I guess when you're more grown up now, I'm seeing like, wow, that was I'm basically the only one.
Yeah, I guess what it is you get older and you learn to understand, and then you start to look at it from the outside, and I guess you would have to say is, and like, wow, now I understand why other people act the way they do around these people who are like, if you were hanging around with Tom, you had Tom Kiefer next to you, he was just Tom, right? But now let me ask you your preferences in music. Was it just obvious the connection that's what you grew up around, and you just naturally became a fan of rock and roll by experiencing it, or were you listening to other stuff? Do you listen to you mix or open to everything? Tell me your story.
It's actually pretty complicated. So at first, when I was younger, of course, me growing up with my mom, I've always been a huge fan of rock. But as I started to get older, and this is mostly in the high school, I started, I guess, branching my music case a lot. So I listen to a lot of different stuff now. Um, so probably around the start of high school is when I started transitioning from just listening to like mostly classic, actually entirely classic rock, to looking for new bands, looking for new sounds, finding the bands that I truly liked, and also checking out new genres of music that I hadn't really listened to before. To where now I believe I can comment almost on any genre, pretty in an educated manner. So
That's cool. Now, did you ever, let's say, did you ever play any, get into bands or like that, or just always a fan?
So when I was younger, I actually started playing drums when I was 6 years old, and I did School of Rock. I don't know if you know what School of Rock is, dude.
Forever,
Yeah,
it's everywhere. Yeah.
yeah, I did School of Rock up until I was 13 years old. And there I mostly did drums. I started doing a little bit of bass towards the end, and in more recent years, I've mostly been playing bass. So yeah, drums and bass. Never really done much band stuff outside of School of Rock, other than just a couple friends that I like to jam with once in a while. But yeah.
So you play. Let me ask you, let's say your preference and style of rock and roll. Are you more of a metal, more of a rock guy, older and
Progressive metal. So
progressive? Okay.
yeah, stuff like Tool. I love playing that. Uh, and also, it's kind of weird for me to say this because in my head they seem kind of opposite. I think in most people do, but I like combining elements of metal and progressive metal with blues.
Really? Why
Yeah,
not?
yeah, it's a pretty interesting, cool sound. It's weird, but it's cool.
But there you go. That's something that I love hearing from, a younger guy your age. You're willing to experiment, especially in a time when, let's say, the new bands, uh, you know, artists and musicians your age, your peers, are
Hmm.
looking for a new sound. And that's what needs to happen, at least in my opinion.
Yeah,
So
for
that's
sure.
cool.
And I feel like I do see it happening. Just it's very hard to find, and this is one thing I want to talk about, new bands. It's extremely hard to find the new good bands because uh this is a huge problem in the digital era is that the music industry, um they control everything you see basically on Spotify, the playlists and everything. um and the algorithms, they're going to give people what they think people want to hear. So it's extremely hard for small, unproven bands to break through to large amounts of listeners because if they don't have that backing from the industry and from the algorithms, then they're simply not going to be shown to anyone. So that's something that I think um, that rock fans in general can change because there's so many rock fans. Just I feel like there's a lot of rock fans, especially some older ones, who don't really want to branch away from the older classic rock bands. And I get it, they're great. Led Zeppelin, AC/DC, great. But I feel like there needs to be more attention brought to younger bands.
I'm glad you say that because now you're a perfect example of a few of the if you ever really start to follow Keep Rock Alive on what we do, you'll see there's a lot of younger kids. I say younger, in their late teens, early 20s, even some younger, mid-teens, but that you're saying what a lot of people don't get. You said it, you cover what, how the industry spoon feeds what's being, what's popular right now. And they're always going to go with easy money. But like you also said, a reluctance by the older classic rock fan, which is a guy like me, but I was converted. And a lot of the people that follow keep rock alive. Let's just say, people that, I grew up with through the 70s and 80s, your mother did through the late 80s and 90s. That group of rock fan right now is probably still the biggest pool of rock fans, let's say established, and we are admittedly a rock fan.
Undoubtedly.
Yeah. And then there's just a huge gap. And you got a sprinkling of, let's say, high school, students, even junior high. But,
yeah.
And that's it. And it's hard. And like you said, there's no chance for these young bands or up and coming bands, independent bands to have a sniff because people seem to go with the flow. So if Spotify were to say, listen to this band, people are apt to do it. Whereas, we're trying to do it here. And you just said it, and this must be also, is this the same opinion that a lot of the kids, people you talk to, friends of yours and and such, where they say, even when they're looking for rock and roll, you're only finding the junk that's really on the Billboard 100 list or the Billboard the rock chart, which right now you're looking to see Miley Cyrus as the #1 rock album
Yeah.
in the country.
Yeah,
So,
it makes no sense to me.
Let me ask you, okay, what's your opinion of that? How does an 18-year-old guy say, who's a genuine, true blue rock fan? What's your take on that? When the first time you heard that was the #1 rock album in the country, what was your thoughts?
I feel that it's unfair to a lot of the other like actual rock bands. Like sure maybe Miley Cyrus will make a rock album, but that doesn't mean that she's a rock artist. So I feel like it's taking a lot away from those artists. But at the same time, I'm going to use Imagine Dragons as an example because consistently every year for like the past decade, they've been the top rock band.
They're on the chart like every week.
Yeah. And I love them. I love Imagine Dragons. I think they're great. I think they have a lot of great songs, great talent, and a lot of creativity. And I think, they should probably be labeled as like alternative modern rock. But at the same time, I do see the arguments of other people who don't believe that Imagine Dragons is like quote unquote rock. But that's another thing that I want to talk about later, that how rock as music is changing and how the sounds are changing and getting more modern. And also the massive amount of subgenres that I think is kind of funny.
It is. It's like,
I was recently looking at my Spotify Wrapped, the year-end thing about your Spotify.
You listen to the most and stuff.
Yeah, that stuff. And one thing was how many genres you discovered, and I'm like, when I saw that, I'm like, wait, what does that mean? And mine was like 250 something. I'm like, there are that many genres? And then my girlfriend Kate, who's should be watching this now, shout out to Kate. Hers was like 500, and I'm like, how are there that many genres?
That means every song or every album has its own genre.
Yeah.
And now but that you make a good point, because there's another thing that confuses people, and I find this happens. And let me ask you, as an example, Bandcamp. I don't know if you ever use it.
I've never used it, but I know of it.
It's a great platform for bands that just, any artist, anybody. I mean, I could record a song tonight and upload it tonight and call myself whatever. You choose your own genre, which is something I'm tremendously against. But the reason is, and I say this is, and this kind of goes back again, and I'll ask you your opinion on this with Miley, is it kind of misrepresents us, at least the way I look at it, because again, you got so many genres, subgenres, and then if they're not classified, a lot, Like, where does a band, if you put yourself, let's say, in the general rock category with what we consider rock, it never has a chance.
Mhm.
Meanwhile, the stuff that shouldn't be in that category is what you see on the Billboard.
Yeah.
We're leading the way right now. And then you'll even get a mix of stuff which is just flat out not rock and roll.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now, I say that to the first timer that might be interested in, see somebody talks to me, what do you do? I help promote, rock and roll, whatever. Oh, that's cool. I should check it out. Well, I never listened to it. I'll go on Bandcamp. I would never do that
Mhm.
because they would immediately not hear rock and roll. They
Yeah.
wouldn't know. And then they might say, I don't like it. It sucks to not really hear rock and roll. So you make a good point. And well, do you have a lot of friends who are in bands? Through
Uh,
School of Rock or branching off?
I don't. Um, there's a lot of very small communities like that online where I could name people or I know people.
Mhm.
Something I think is interesting is actually TikTok is great for that. TikTok has shown me a bunch of new bands that I really like, and it's been great for a lot of people my age or even younger than me sometimes to get out there.
And it's another thing I'm glad you said, because here you are. Um, this past spring, I started talking about TikTok on Keep Rock Alive, and people, the older classic rock band like myself again, generally stuck in the past, and you see what TikTok was or is then. And I said, you got to go where the kids are.
Hmm.
And it was starting to pick up then, and I started doing it. I started taking, the clips, the downloadable clips, and I just found a lot of people over there, a lot of bands, artists, musicians, rock and roll.
Yeah, there's so many.
It,
It's
and I haven't even scratched the surface. I'm still trying to figure out how to correctly search on TikTok because of the way it works. But here you are
to be
saying,
honest, I haven't even figured that out.
I, I've even,
I just let it come to me.
and it works. But
Yep.
you have to, and I want you to use you as again another example of here's where the kids go, and this is where the future of rock and roll is. So to be successful, we have to grab the youth. I've said that it doesn't matter what it is you're selling, what type of music, what's popular right now, rock, pop and hip hop, right? And what's the biggest demographic of their fan base? 15 to 25 or 15 to 30. That used to be us. That used to be us when we went to all the bands that you've gotten to, let's say, rub elbows with as you grew up. When those guys were touring the country, filling arenas and stadiums, it was me as an 18, 20-year-old, 25-year-old going to those concerts. The 90s, your mother's younger than me, but that's our generation. And when, they say when rock ruled the world, you go on VH1 and you see all those stories.
Hmm.
But we haven't had that in a long time. And you said it in your first comments with the way the industry kind of just, once it feels a shift, it goes with the shift and it pushes the shift even harder.
Right. The men in suits, they're going for the money.
Right. And you're absolutely right. And this is something that people, I think, need to get out of their head. Just because it's rock and roll, they're going to feel bad for us now. They don't care. They want this. But again, now, but you're also discovering some of the new bands.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, you're from the West Coast. Um, you kind of got a feel for the vibe and the scene out there, but let me ask, list off some of your favorite new bands. And when I say new bands, current bands up and coming in the last 3 to 5 years, or even just this year, not.
All right. So I'm the first one I'm gonna have to name. Uh, their name. I wish they had a better name because I think they could be so much bigger than they are with a better name. It's a funny name, but it's kind of cool. I don't know. Psychedelic Porn Crumpets out of Australia.
Really?
Yeah, great band. I love their High Visceral album, part one, part two. Uh, honestly, some of the most beautiful music I have ever listened to. and their new releases, they're good. In my opinion, they all have kind of a general same sound on the new album, so I'm a little angry with them right now. But still, it's great music out of Australia, which there is a huge new rock kind of neo psychedelic scene coming out of Australia. So many great bands, festivals, and just a huge new rock fan base in Australia that I think is the next great rock scene.
Hmm. You just threw me a curve because you're way deep.
Yeah.
You blew me back with that one. Let me ask,
Yes.
where did you get, uh, let's say, this insight that you have into it and the depth of knowledge you have for, let's say, today's rock? Because right there, you just proved to me that's something I haven't heard from most just general rock bands. Is this something that just came with, growing up, or friends, or a school of rock that they give you, like, or you're just finding it on your own?
I'm mostly just finding them on my own.
Wow, you might have a job here. After this, I got to start writing these down. Um,
Yeah,
uh,
that's probably my number one, psychedelic porn crumpets.
you,
For my favorite songs by them, I would say either Found God on a Tomato or Denmark slash Van Gogh Gone.
wow. And you said something else, which is something that's worth noting too, because everything is sometimes, especially nowadays, that things are just skin deep. That a name of a band can affect their success.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. Especially in the industry because, as I said, music industry, they're going to want music, especially for rock, much more so than any other genre, that they want it to be quote unquote family friendly. Because in rock, I guess there's going to be a lot more. Eh,
Judgmental. It's more
yeah,
microscope.
probably yeah, because the rock community, I hate to say it, is extremely judgmental.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, look at how easy. Maybe I don't know if you've run into this, where you get the older rock fans, and I have it all the time. I've been battling that for over pushing 4 years, where they instantly jump to the conclusion that all new rock sucks,
Yeah,
or it's not.
that's I hear that. That's one thing that makes me really mad
Mhm.
because I think that there is new rock out there that can compete with some of the greatest rock of the 70s and 80s.
Yep.
Um, one band that I only recently discovered, they've been around for a while. I guess most of this decade, 2010s. If I remember correctly, I don't have it in front of me. I think they released their first album in 2012 or 2013. All Them Witches, do you know them?
Yep.
Yeah. All Them Witches, I love them. Can't stop listening to them right now.
They are.
Yeah.
And again, you mentioned a really good scene that I hadn't heard of that the band you just mentioned, but I do have a lot of bands that we featured on Keep Rock Alive from Australia. They kind of bridge themselves with the UK too.
Yeah.
Very, very much aligned.
Yeah,
So
very much.
do you, and then the progressive stuff I'm noticing, even though it's not my bag, uh, let's say taste wise, but I do post the music because it's not about me. It's about let the people decide. And I don't care if it's rock and roll and it doesn't suck.
Mhm.
I just post it. It's not for me to sit here posting my personal playlist is what I call it. I want to get somebody to explode. I don't know how that's going to happen,
Mhm.
but and like you said, a centralized location to find music, and I love hearing fresh, like band I never heard of. I want to investigate.
I have
So
one band that I think could actually explode. I'm gonna save them for a little later though.
yeah, yeah, keep us in suspense. That's all
Yep.
right. But you also said about like the rock and roll being under the microscope. I don't know if maybe let's. I don't want to put you in any position where you don't have to answer this, but because rock and roll has always been edgy, and I think it's lost a little edge. But right now, in the times we're living in, especially since like say 2000, where anything you say can be taken. With the way social media is twisted, taken out of context, and one word. Let's say the political correctness and the offensiveness of just about anything. The way we stand right now, you see that that's also something that's hurting rock and roll and holding it back from being what it truly is. Coming from someone, 18 years old, looking at the scene from your perspective. Or is the music itself right now, in your opinion, good enough to just hang, and then maybe we start taking steps to being more of that edge again? What I'm saying is there other kids out there that are looking for that, like we did. Rock and roll made, was our voice. As when we were upset with something, it was the voice and the rebel.
Yeah, no, of course there are. Of course there are. I mean, you can find anybody looking for anything, but especially the edge. Yeah, there's definitely people looking for that, but I don't think they're looking for it in rock.
Okay.
And that's where I want to go, to how rock and metal has branched out into other genres that it's a tough sell on my point right here. Because I know a lot of people are going to disagree with me, but there is a huge and currently rising, and just about almost everybody my age listens to it, me included. It's going to be there's so many different names for this genre, but I'm gonna use one of the more common names. It's basically a metal rap, where it's basically that basically rebellious kind of fuck you edge that you mentioned, but instead of rock, it's gonna be like taking the heavier elements, more metally elements, and basically putting that in rap. One artist who's very famous would be Ghost Domain, where he does metal, like actual metal, like drums, guitar stuff, and then he also does rap, and then sometimes he does both at the same time, and it's a really interesting sound. It's gaining a lot of popularity, and I guess that's one of the more, and I'm gonna say it's definitely not rock, but it wouldn't be a thing without rock.
Right. Well, that's the question: is where does rock and metal, rock and roll take the next step?
Mm-hmm.
Which it's always it's always done. Let's say since the 50s and up till 2000, we haven't had that rock star explosion. I think, and maybe you can dispute this.
Mm-hmm.
I always say it kind of the last big culture shifting kind of rock act, which was a grunge band, was Nirvana. We haven't had a Nirvana, we haven't had a Guns N' Roses, we haven't had
Killers.
So, and we've had really good bands, but not, maybe some of the bands that, let's say, arrived in the last 20, 25 years at a different time would have exploded.
I would say that one song, I would say actually probably the last one would be the Killers with Mr. Brightside.
Really?
That song is still on the charts. I don't know how many years it's been. Mr. Brightside, the Killers, is still on the charts, and I'd say it really influenced a good 10 years of rock from 2000 to 2010.
Right.
A lot of different bands, so many I could name. From, as I said, the Killers, Black Keys, of course. There's a big era of rock there, and that's where I say you see a big change to the subgenres. Another subgenre that I noticed is that just this year and last year picking up a lot of traction is pop punk is making a revival. And punk itself is coming back, which I think is really interesting. I would have never expected it, but that's another thing where you say that edge.
Yep.
I completely forgot about this when you asked me that, but yeah, punk is coming back. It's a huge thing right now, especially in my generation.
Well, that's what I would see. The first person of your generation to say that to me, that you are experiencing it.
Yeah.
There's
And I
enormous.
say it didn't start happening until recently. I didn't even know about it, about its resurgence until maybe 2 or 3 months ago. And then I started listening to some new stuff and I'm like, oh wow. It's not punk isn't really necessarily my thing. But it's definitely making a big comeback right now.
The only reason I talk about it so much, and especially in the last 2 years, is that I just keep repeating that maybe we need that at the end of the '70s, that punk kind of attitude again, which it didn't last long, but it forced that change that led into what we all saw in the '80s.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of, it went from punk to the glam rock to the, I know you're not allowed to say it, but we'll call it the '80s metal, hair metal. And then,
Yeah.
and then the craziness, and then we had the absolute opposite with answer, which was grunge. But we need something to lead the way, and that, again, you said that fuck you attitude.
Yeah.
Punk is that attitude, if it's true to being punk.
Oh yeah.
But another thing that I've learned over the last few years, and there are so many consolidated scenes that I'm discovering just how deep they really are. And this happens.
It's so deep.
Yeah. And I'm going to ask you in a minute about LA, because I'm finding bands, but it's sporadic. And when I say sporadic, they come to me, and they may lead to a few others, but this really happened. Especially, I knew the UK, there was a lot. I've discovered a lot in the last year or two, but in the last couple of months, this name keeps coming up of this emerging rock bands that is they're similar to what we do, but they really went all in on promoting new rock and roll in the UK, and they do everything talked about them 100 times. But I'm starting to bleed off of them the amount of bands that they're actually working with or that they're exposed to, and I'm like, holy shit! I wish there was a way to count the amount of bands on the planet that you can just say a rock and roll band, meaning rock or metal. If there's a way to do that, obviously there isn't, but it's enormous, and it just blows my mind that with the amount of, let's say, the size of our army, as when I say rock and roll, I mean rock and roll is the whole tree, and all the branches of the subgenres.
Yeah,
So rock,
I completely agree.
and
And now more than ever, I think that's really important because I was thinking when you were talking about it, I don't necessarily believe that there will be like that rock star again, or that you'll have rock artists that achieve that same commercial success. Because if I see um I don't know, I'm not a music industry expert or anything, but I see the music industry moving forward with new genres rather than returning to rock, because it's always about new technologies and stuff. And I think that rock will always have bands and artists that include those technologies, but I see it unlikely that there will ever be a true rock number one hit again. I mean, and they'll still occasionally reach number one. I mean, it happens all the time. Look at Paul McCartney. I mean, his new album just reached number one in the UK.
That's an established artist too. I mean, look
Yeah.
at Sgt. Pepper's, not last year, year before, or was it last? I don't even remember now. It was number one on his 50th anniversary. So that's because that's the timelessness of certain music. The Eagles has been on, it's the number one selling record of all time now. So those I call them exempt. If Paul McCartney,
yeah, I see that.
even when he put out the album.
There's one other example that I completely blanking out on. It'll come back to me later though.
You all the time because you get talking and you skip over it.
Yeah.
But
no, it'll sporadically happen where they will hit the charts, but in nowhere near here. I have a better way to put it. So if you look at the charts now, even if say one band, one song, one artist hits the charts, the rest of it is still all going to be rap and pop and other stuff. So I personally don't think it even matters if one rock band makes it up on the charts because like number one, there will always be rock bands hitting the charts, but say that number one spot, that's so important. Um,
We have no
doesn't
staying.
matter if it's not longevity.
You nailed it right on the head, because it's amazing how much you and I see eye to eye. And I'm 54 years old. I'm looking at rock and roll from 54 backwards. You're looking at it from 18 forward. Oh, and we see it very, very much in a similar way, that where you're saying one may make it, and yeah, that's cool. And then you hear everybody say, there's nothing wrong with rock. The other example was Tool. Oh yeah, well, Tool hit number one last year. They hadn't put out an album forever.
Yeah, 13 years was it?
Yeah, Tool. And
Yeah.
who else? Jesus Christ, Slipknot. That was,
Slipknot, yeah.
yeah. And I mean, they went through some shit, and but they got a tremendously loyal fan base, and they come out with the album number one, and then what, a week or two later, it was just literally gone.
Yeah.
I think even when Tool put out the album, Taylor Swift put out something, one of those this new thing with the unannounced albums, and it just decimated it,
Yeah.
And yeah, it's cool to have that flesh, but we have no staying power. So
exactly. I think it's better if people just stopped waiting for, I guess, rock to come back, and I put that in quotation because
I know what you're saying.
Rock never left.
Right. We don't need another Guns N' Roses, what you're saying.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
We need a Guns N' Roses back the week before any of us heard Guns N' Roses. The band we've never heard before, at least this is what the way I think you're thinking, is that, holy shit, did you hear these guys? But the same way it was fresh to us then, it's fresh to you and your friends and, guys and girls your age, 18, 20, 25, to say, holy shit, did you hear this band?
Yeah.
That's what new. Because all that stuff that, like, in the 80s and 90s and 70s when I was, was all new then. It's something people can't wrap their head around. And you don't hear any of the bands of the 50s and the 60s, let's say, the doo-wop stuff coming back. It's been done. It was replaced by the 60s. The 60s was replaced by the 70s. We need the Jesus Christ. I mean, it's 2021 in a few days. And I was running around.
That's crazy to me.
I mean, now you're a kid, and I say you're a kid, but you've seen, almost all of this century. I'm looking back to bands that, when I was in junior high school, that are still out there, but it's almost like they're just hanging on, and it's cool. And they're making money and they do their thing, but it's not the answer to rock and roll continuing. And like you said, we have to be open-minded to a new sound. We don't even know what that sound is.
I could, I completely agree with you. And I think that there have been a lot of mistakes that have already been made. I mean, I'm going to use an example here, and I'd hate to put any band under the bus, especially a rock band, but Greta Van Fleet. I have a bone to pick with them.
Oh no!
Because
if you say what I think you're going to say, then you've either been, somebody gave you the dossier on me. But go ahead and say it. I'll see if we agree.
I have a bone to pick with Greta Van Fleet because I think they're great. I love the sound, but first time I ever heard Greta Van Fleet, I was playing a baseball game, and one of their songs, Safari Song, was featured on the soundtrack. And I was just playing the game, and I heard the song, and I'm like, wow, this is a really good song. Is this a Led Zeppelin song I've never heard before? And I'm like, oh wait, no, this is definitely not Led Zeppelin. Maybe it's a Robert Plant like solo thing. Greta Van Fleet, huh? So I say it's kind of a mistake made because I feel like really the only reason that they have had as much commercial success as they have is because they sound just like Led Zeppelin, not because they have their own sound.
When we complete these interviews now, or these chats, what we call them now, right?
Mhm.
What I do is, and your mother knows too, and I did it with her. I'll go through them the next day, and then I pull out the, let's say key speaking points, talking points, whatever. This is going to be one of them. But if you go back and listen to what I say about Greta Van Fleet, you saw every word. And there's one other thing that you missed. Josh Kiska.
Mhm.
You know, again, I'll repeat what I always say, which is basically what you said. Musically, they're fucking phenomenal.
Yeah.
They really are. I mean, and it's so cool to see a band that age with that. It's your basic classic, and I don't say classic rock, I mean it's your classic
Mhm.
rock structure. The band is set bass, guitars, drums, lead singer. That's what we expected from a rock band. But like you said, the first time I heard them, I heard Highway 2. I loved it. You could tell it's original, but I mean, it drips. And then when the new album came out, I was hoping maybe these kids are just being directed by, because they got, they're saying, well, here's the horse. You got to ride the horse that brung you, kind of thing, which I think is a huge mistake because when you set the bar that high to try to be, I don't ever want to see another. When I say I don't want to ever see another Led Zeppelin, don't try to be a Led Zeppelin.
Exactly.
Don't try to be a Black Sabbath. Don't try to be a Kiss, anything like this. They've set the bar and they're kind of on their own pedestal. But the biggest mistake they made was last year, I guess, before the new album came out, and most of the interviews were coming back, and I was like, I like rewound. Did I just hear them say that? And they asked, well, obviously you were influenced by Led Zeppelin. Well, no, we weren't.
Yeah, I heard that, and
I
I
was like,
almost I almost didn't believe it.
Wait a minute. So what
Yeah.
you're telling me is nature or God or whatever you believe in put these four guys together that just happen to sound literally almost exactly, I don't want to say, but they've
Yeah.
even
I
stolen the motions and the moves and the hooks and the everything.
Yeah, literally everything. Even the playing especially the playing styles, guitar and drums. Even when I was listening for the first time, before I knew it was Greta Van Fleet, when I still thought maybe this is a Led Zeppelin song I never heard before, or Robert Plant solo stuff. I listened to the guitars. I'm like, that sounds so much like how Jimmy Page plays, or that sounds so much like how John Bonham drums.
Mm-hmm. No,
So for them to say that they had no Led Zeppelin influence, it makes no sense.
and I don't understand why they did that. And I thought maybe they got so deep into that comparison that
I know they don't like it. I believe I've heard them say they don't like the comparison.
and that's
But
fine.
yeah, that's
If you
fine.
don't sound just like the other band, is it pure coincidence? But the mannerisms that Josh had's like, Robert Plant he did this thing where it was almost like he looked like he was twirling his hair and the way he held the mic.
Mhm.
It's exactly the same. So you don't forget. I mean, and again, I'm the same as you, where you don't want to knock a band because they are extremely talented. But
Yeah.
I keep saying maybe this next album, which a song came out 2 months ago, I guess, 6 weeks ago, whatever it was. It
I have
came
to
out
check it
like
out.
nobody even knew it happened. And that's what you did not want to see from this new the second or third, this new album coming out. And I'm thinking to myself, well, maybe they're going to allow them to be themselves. Because if you listen to some of the demo recordings, they sound nothing like this last album. They sound more like them, a
I'll have to
young
check that
band.
out.
Yeah, it's on YouTube and there's places that you can hear it. But they sound like a young band who's been influenced by Led Zeppelin, or let's just say 70s rock, late 60s. They have the ingredients, but they don't sound like a Led Zeppelin. I hate to say copycat, but some of the music is just, like you said, you couldn't distinguish the difference if somebody didn't tell you.
Yeah.
And you know the music. And it's happened to a lot of people, and there's a lot of the, they dug themselves a hole with the classic rock band fans, like the real purists. You don't ever besmirch Led Zeppelin or Robert Plant, and then I've had people do the opposite, and I go, I understand, and I want to protect them too, and I hope they become themselves and form their own identity. But oh well, Jimmy Page stole from Jeff Beck. What the fuck does that mean? I mean, Two wrongs don't make it right.
Yeah.
And I would love to just hear these kids when nobody's looking, jamming. What do they really sound like?
Hmm.
Because I guarantee you that they've got their sound underneath all that somewhere. And hopefully, if this bombs, it's very easy to form, how many times has this happened in the history of rock and roll? A flash in the pan or one-hit wonders. And it'd be a shame to see a talented band slip through the cracks like that. But if they're not willing to either accept, hey, listen, of course we listen to Led Zeppelin as kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
Of course it affected us. But I don't know. But here we go. That kind of leads into, and where we don't have that, Greta Van Fleet, like you said, it made it to games, the music, it made it to some advertisements. It got huge exposure for them. And I believe it kind of blew up in their face because people have said, why isn't the NFL having rock bands at the Super Bowl halftime? They could have AC/DC, or if they want one of and this is the name that comes up all the time often, one of the newer bands, Greta Van Fleet. The problem is neither of them are big enough to carry keeping 100 million people watching.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the problem, because we don't have the staying power. That nobody's going to bring us back to the mainstream.
I think that people need to stop focusing on bringing rock back to the mainstream, because personally, from my viewpoint, my generation standpoint, it doesn't really even matter what's mainstream anymore, because at least in my generation, where are we listening to our music? We're not listening to what's on the radio or what's being played at the Super Bowl. If we have a specific music taste, we're finding that on Spotify, on Apple Music, on YouTube. So we can find a good music, and it doesn't need to be mainstream.
Right. It's literally. Well, this is something that came up, and you just led me into something that I was going to mention a few minutes ago. And you just, I don't want to say prove my theory, but I've done a couple of interviews over last year, and good guy. We had differing opinions, which made the interviews interesting. But I've learned that you have to go, like you say, you have to look forward. You guys, it's not what we want. It's what, and I don't know what it is, and you're looking for it. And like you said, experimentation, mixing two genres together, metal and rap, whatever it takes to get, the 15 to 25-year-old to say, this is going to be our music, whatever that is. Nobody knows it until it happens.
Right.
You also said before that you're not an industry expert. Nobody is. Even the industry experts aren't industry experts, because right now nobody knows what's next.
Yeah.
And it's a good time, especially with everything that's going on, that I think the public, or let's say the generation, is ready for something different. Everything's kind of been stagnant for a while. Everyone's been in this spot, but like you were saying about, Jesus, now I lost my train of thought. Oh, the music's at your fingertips. And the argument was, well, back when we were kids, and anything that starts with back when we were kids, it doesn't apply to now.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I grew up, we had vinyl, we had albums. Then we went into cassettes, and you were able to, and I still do it now. I buy music, I buy albums that I can't even play, just to be able to, look at, and like when I was younger, and read the liner notes and stuff like that.
You'd be surprised.
It's coming
actually,
back.
I know a lot of people, me included. We'd have to have vinyl just to have it.
Yeah. Yep. And it's got it's, for me, it's the allure of the flashback. And does it sound better? In my opinion, yeah, it does actually. But that's not the point. The point is, you're 18 years old, so you were born 2002, right?
Yeah.
Okay. In 2002, what formats of music did we have? And you were just you know what I mean?
Yeah.
All right, we had the MP3s were out, right? And
yeah,
I think the iPod was out.
I think iPod was 2005.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that's when the music was CDs, And that was starting to slip to the digital formats. The Napster thing was before that, so you could get music. Yeah, because there was Apple Music, wasn't it? I don't even remember. But
iTunes.
iTunes, sorry. But you could buy it. Your music was becoming digital, period. Meaning it was starting to literally float in space where you didn't even need a compact disc. You were able to save it on your computer and MP3 formats, and that evolved into the iPod, which evolved into the iPhone, and the rest is history. And now you see all of what you just said. Where you have this all at your fingertips, it doesn't help guide you. You kind of look for yourself or the suggestions by the music you listen to. When we were kids, we had 6 to 8 radio stations. 3, 4 of them were rock, and then there was disco and whatever easily. But that's how we found the new music for the most part. We turned on the radio, and here's the new one from this band Aerosmith. That's how long ago that one. For the first time I heard the Ramones or all of that. Now, you're not missing that because you didn't grow up in that era. And this is what I try to explain to people. So
Yeah.
this is why I want to have somebody 18 years old sitting here and telling me, how do you discover music? And this is part of your life. You grew up in this. So like you were just saying, you have Spotify. You have all these digital platforms. Because I don't even know. Like you said, you find the artists and musicians on TikTok, which I think is
that's a very new one. That's like this year that started.
but like you said, it started. So
Oh, sorry, that's my dog.
but and this is what I'm trying to say, that I like to get this out, that it's not me saying it and just talking bullshit. Here's a guy 18 years old who's living it. We've had a couple of the Griffin Tucker and Abby Kay. They reiterate the same thing, and they're in the game. They're trying to make a living, make their earn their reputation and building a fan base. And I want people to see the artists and the fans too, because even simple things like clicking a like or following a band or whatever, that all matters. Subscribing to the YouTube channels. If you want to see that these bands succeed, this is what you got to do to support. But as for music, I couldn't tell you, but you've made some points that a lot of you, like you said, the crusty old rock fans are going to say, oh, you can't mix rap and metal, or you can't this. Why not?
Exactly. Why not?
Because back in the 80s, who could have looked forward, in 1981, who could have seen a Poison coming?
Mm-hmm.
Nobody. And there were a lot of people that say, oh, this is gross. This is for, this is for girls. And yeah, that was the idea. You bring the girls to the arena, and that's when the guys come, because that's where the girls were. That's how it worked. When you start thinking like someone, that's young, and they go out and you go out, that's what made it so successful. It was a huge party. I don't think we're going to see that again.
No.
But like you said, there needs to be what's coming next, and you're part of it. You're doing it. You're experimenting with music. You're putting two different, two ingredients that haven't been put together before. You're working with it, and who's to say what's good or what isn't, because we don't know. It hasn't been done yet. That's the idea. That's rock and roll. It's been in its roots forever, that it just keeps evolving. We've always been the mutt,
Mm-hmm. And I think that's what makes rock what it is, and that's how it became what it was. For example, the idea of rock and roll in the 1950s versus the idea of rock and roll in the 1980s, and say in the 1980s, you could have a different idea of rock in 1981 and then 1989, completely different.
Right.
So that's just going to keep happening. There's going to be new sounds, new bands, which there are actually still a couple bands that I would like to name if we have time.
Oh, you got all the time in the world. We don't, as long as you want to talk.
Perfect. So as I said earlier, Psychedelic Corn Crumpets. I've probably listened to them the most. I think they started in 2016. All Them Witches, currently my obsession. um, Another band I think is worth mentioning, Graveyard. Um, a lot more blues roots in there.
Mhm.
But I love it, especially the Siren by Graveyard. That is probably my favorite song right now. Um, Blues Pills is the one that I believe could have commercial success. Um, so that's Blues Space Pills. Just amazing. I don't even know how to explain their, I guess, subgenre because they have so many.
Hmm.
um, but they really kind of combine the what I believe is the more popular sound of new rock, which is going to be more progressive, psychedelic, just very more relaxed and mellow, because that's what most of my generation is looking for in music. Something that's just more chilled out. Um, and then when we want something hard, we'll find hard, which is almost exclusively going to be in metal or that metal rap I was talking about. But for rock and roll, I believe most of it is going to be that melodic, chilled out, um, just very kind of relaxing music. And Blues Pills, they do a great job of having both energetic and relaxing. Um, Female lead, amazing voice. I'm sadly spacing on their names right now. I'm not good with that names. Um, but yeah, that's a band I think everybody should check out.
I know we have them. And I'm the same way. I don't even when I go deep enough that I start to learn them, I can't absorb them all. It's just too much.
Yeah, there's so many.
But that's a good thing.
And if for people that are rock and roll purists that want that old sound, I would tell them to go with the Dirty Honey.
You're gonna say it. Yeah,
Yep.
it's true, and that's good. So because there's something for everybody.
Hmm.
But
Yeah, there really is something for everybody, and I think that's what makes
rock
rock
and roll,
great.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's exactly because if you go back, we're pushing what 70 years. Uh, yeah, 70 years. You go back to just say 1950. You know, where we crawled out of the swamps. That's where I say rock came from. The swamps, the jazz clubs,
Yeah.
churches, everywhere. And it's the one that's continued to keep, because you go over the last 60 years, it's really the only one constant other than classical, the
Yeah.
old numbers. But you got your way deeper than I thought. She only gave me a little. She dropped a few seeds on us when we were talking the last time, and then it came up, and I'm like, of course, I'll talk. I'd love to talk. You got to come back. Well, let me ask you. Let's go back to your schooling. Now, when do you go back on? You go on campus, or what's going on
Yeah.
out there?
So my school is on campus. We are in person. That is great. Because in Arizona, I'm actually very glad that I chose an out-of-state school. When I was looking for colleges, I was like, oh no, I only want to be in state. And I chose an Arizona college. I do not regret that. That was before the pandemic, obviously. Because I don't think there is a single on-campus school in California right now, except
Yeah, because what right now you guys are you still in Don't Leave Your House lockdown or whatever?
yeah, we went back to that.
Jesus Christ.
But honestly, I was pretty annoyed with it until I actually looked at the numbers
I
in all of LA County. Um, last I checked, I believe it was December 18th. I know it's still really bad though. For a 10 million person county, we were at 24 ICU beds. So yeah. So that's why
God
I'm
forbid.
like, okay, you know what? Maybe you're excused. Lock us down. Yeah, that's 24 ICU beds. That is concerning. Um,
Yeah, because I'm a little bit of a wise guy, so I don't comment on everything. But 2 weeks ago, whenever that started, your mother she posted something about it. So I like to be the guy that throws some fuel on the fire. She said something, so I can't even walk my dog. so I said, well, then just go run your dog. I don't think she ever saw it, but
That's funny.
I like to bust balls.
Yeah.
But
So yeah, my college is on campus. We're doing a weird kind of like half and half thing. So like half the classes are in person, and half of them are online.
hybrid, they call it here.
Yeah,
I think it's more
it
confusing
worked.
than the
Yeah,
other.
it I personally would prefer all in person, but obviously we can't do that because online learning it's not as easy to truly understand concepts through a screen.
Right.
I personally like to have that in person. I know a lot of people are with me on that. But overall, I'm really grateful um, that over these past few months, I've had an amazing experience in college. I have great friends. I found a great girlfriend. Um, and yeah, things have been really going good for me.
Good. Now that'll when it's aeronautics, right? So
Yeah,
so
yeah.
that'll set you up for. I mean, let's say in the industry, what's your goal?
So my goal, I'm a very ambitious person. I want to do things that are bigger than myself. Um, and I've actually recently started a business plan. My goal is to start an airline. Um, and I've recently started a business plan and I've started getting it set up um, so that I can do what I've always wanted to do. It's not going to be easy. I know it's very ambitious, but that's what I want to do.
Why not?
Yeah.
That's perfect, and you're not just you're earning it. I mean, you're starting right. You're going through the school. You're setting yourself up for your future. That's cool.
Mhm.
Very cool. And why not go big? It's only
Yeah.
big if you let it be
Yeah,
big.
I say go big or go home.
Yeah. What the hell?
Because I personally I couldn't. I'm just not the type of person. I don't believe I could be working a 9 to 5 for the rest of my life. And at my school, the reason I chose it is because it is an amazing school. For if you want to work in aviation, out of Embry-Riddle, if you graduate, you're basically guaranteed a job. I believe it has like a 98% job placement rate out of college. It's insane, and especially for my major, if I graduated, I could be pretty confident that I could have just about any business job or business development job that I want in Boeing or Delta Airlines or something, but that's not what I want. I want to be able to do my own thing.
All right.
Um,
There's a guy to look
so
at right now that if he thought small, he wouldn't be planning on going to Mars.
yeah,
Elon Musk. He's a guy, you know what I mean?
yeah.
And to me, the way you're thinking is I used to think I was that way when I was younger, but I start to see what I call you guys are high performance. You're thinking on levels way higher than I could ever even imagine. And you know what? That's cool. It really is. But oh, I know. I think I have to clear up. This came up last night, and I don't want to talk about her too much. She gets to talk all the time. I'm sure we'll get her again somewhere along the line. But I put up a thing last night about what was it? It said somewhere in the world right now, a mother is yelling, "I'll bring all this shit back," right? And it was about like Christmas night where the kids, get out of hand, and then finally the parents snap and say, "We're going to bring all the toys back to the store." Did your mother really threaten to take your toys and throw them in the dumpster outside?
um, that would have been when I was so young.
All right. I just wanted to
um,
see if she was embellishing because it was in one of the feed with the post, and we were just kidding about about being parents. And
yeah.
anyone that's a
No,
parent,
there was
so I said she was evil.
there was something like that, but hey, it worked. It got me in line.
Exactly. That's why I said, you know what? I never expected this. She was tough. Jeez.
Yeah,
Uh,
no, I mean, she's really had to be um through everything. So, yeah.
and that's why when your mother, again, she followed Keep Rock Alive. I almost, it's weird because, like you said, when we were talking at the beginning, when you grew up, when you grow up through something that, let's say, someone like me or fans or, look from the outside in, that for certain people there's a certain starstruckness or, oh, wow, you got to meet her. You hung out with Cinderella. Oh, shit, man. Yeah. To you, it's just part of life.
Yeah,
Cool.
most of my friends don't even know about it.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is,
Because I don't. Yeah.
It was like she never, and when she followed, I was like, okay. And then I started talking. And she even said it in the comments. She says you were like stunned that I said, well, kinda. I'm like, Jesus Christ, why? And you can tell she's very cool, and
Yeah.
that's why I said I'm not, I don't want to speak like everybody else. And then she started talking about you, and I'm like, she didn't. I can see that she is. She was tough and not letting, let's say, the glitz mess with you growing up and realizing, I'm going to go out and look what you're doing. You're going to go out and start a business. You're going to school and you're going to start your own business.
Mm-hmm.
You've got a goal. That's what I'm saying. That's cool. Because there's others, they let it go to their head. You didn't do that. But I gotta have you back. Seriously, because one thing I don't have is a lot of youth giving me information.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I'm glad that she brought this up to talk to you. She said it, that he's really into this. And anytime you hear that you don't know, but now I know. So there's a lot more.
Yeah, there's a lot to talk about.
Well, when do you go back to school?
I am going back, I believe, on January 18th.
All right. Well, here's what I do with everybody. And I'm not even going to ask you. I usually have a finishing question because you pretty much answered it. I was going to say, where do you see yourself in 5 years? But forget it. I already know where you see yourself in 5 years. You got your direction as clear as a bell. But this Wednesday, we're doing like an end of year thing where everybody's welcome. And anytime I do anything, anyone that's involved with this, I tell everyone, I told your mom the same thing. She has anything come up that she wants to just use it as the floor, get a recording out there, something, whatever. Everyone's always welcome to shoot me a message. But if you got something that you hear of or you want to talk about, absolutely let me know.
Yeah.
These things are scheduled. You see how it's done. We could schedule something tomorrow. We could schedule it for a month from now. I want rock and roll to start working together again. And
yeah, I agree.
I'm starting to put the pieces together where I've got a little bit of everything now. I've got some youth, I've got some, that are kind of in the middle, and I've got some of the old classic rockers. And I like hearing their complaints and their stubbornness because it helps, I think, the younger bands, I don't think that's the target audience. I never have. I think under 30 and under is the target audience. But here's what you're up against. So maybe not waste so much time trying to convince people that you can't convince. Set in their ways. And so same way my father was set in his ways and looked at my music that I grew up with as junk. Where you listen to that garbage? Yeah. So, I'm kind of a hypocrite saying the same thing, but to look forward, we need input from everybody, because right now this is the first time rock and roll is looked up for so long. And I repeat these things a lot because they need to be repeated, and because it's just the facts. And the only way to confront this is head on. And that's where I always end these with, I run out of things to say, because I've actually run out of things to say. I don't know. I need to hear from the kids. And I say, somebody under 20 years old, what do you think these, your friends, what is it that's hooking them to the music? Why are they listening to this? What's triggering them? What is the sound that, grabs them? I that's not what I do. I don't know how to write music. But, you went to school of rock, you've played, you may not have played in bands, but you actively, learned to be, a musician on whatever level is you decided to go. But if you're talking to friends who were in a band and they're saying, Jesus, we don't know what to do. And, you know, we wrote all these songs and we thought they were cool and we played them and nobody listened to them. We can't get them out there, you know, and then when they hear them, we don't even get a like, they think they suck. You know, we need to find out what it is that's gonna, let's say, resonate with the teens and the 20s. That's just something I wish I could give an answer to these bands. Like you said, if this metal and rap thing hybrid is something that's starting to attract the kids.
I wouldn't give it too much on the rock side, because as I said, I wouldn't really call it anywhere close to rock, but it just takes its roots from metal.
I understand.
Yeah.
That gives them some kind of an idea. Okay, so you got to. It's like, well, you know, if you're marketing a product, you know, it's obviously you want to market something that there's going to be a demand for, or you've created something that nobody's ever, you know, those stupid widget spinners a few years ago. Who thought that was going to start? You know what I mean? Just you never know what's going to, you know, take off. The pet rock. You know, you go back to the 70s.
I've heard about that.
Yes. Oh, if you want to laugh, go look at some of the fads of the 70s.
Yeah, I've watched videos about it.
But you know, not that you want music to sell out like that. You know, you want it to have a longevity to it and actually make an effect. You know, that's what rock and roll has always been.
Exactly. That's what it's always been. That's what it is. And especially, I always like to rag on those purists, because I'd say rock is probably more alive than it's ever been because of its diversity in sound.
It's
and
true. You don't have to
and
like.
I'd say there's probably even more rock listeners today than there were then. It's just different.
Right, and that's something I hate when, you know, the older fans say, you know, we like before, it sucks, it doesn't sound. Why would you shoot your? I say that's like telling your child they're never going to amount to anything because of what the way they're doing something. Maybe the family business. It's similar, but it's still rock, you know, and it's a new age. Look at the new car, the new Camaro that came out doesn't look like the Camaro in 1967.
Have you seen the just on a little sidetrack, have you seen the new Mustang?
Oh, you're talking about the electric Mustang?
Yeah.
The SUV Mustang? Whatever
yeah, whatever it is.
Okay, all right, thank you. I wasn't sure you were trying to throw me a curveball, but you're right. Does that look like a fucking? That's not a Mustang.
I know.
And even someone your age, you know, most kids will say, "That's not a Mustang. It's a fucking soccer mom mobile or whatever."
Yeah.
And I see the way they branded it, but I mean, to me, that's embarrassing. That Ford can. How could you? This. Well, the Corvette is now a 4-door, you know, I don't know, like a Cadillac. No, there's certain things you can't. That's a perfect example. Like you can't take Led Zeppelin and change it. All right, Led Zeppelin will always be Led Zeppelin. The Mustang should always, in my opinion, be the Mustang. The Corvette should always be the Corvette. You want to make an electric hybrid? Okay, call it. I don't know.
Something else.
Yeah,
don't ruin the Mustang brand. Yeah. You know, Mustang.
But
you put a V8 in there.
Right.
Want it to sound good. Yeah.
If you were caught driving and they had them too. They called the 6-cylinder Camaros in the 80s. Again, you got to be careful how you say this, but that was the girls' car. You know, if you were a guy driving, how could you drive that? It's a 6-cylinder. And it's
I'm currently
too. What's wrong with you?
Yeah, I'm currently in the market for I'm looking for a first car, and it's I don't know how to say it.
Go on.
I'm just gonna say this is probably the best way for me to put it without like getting into specifics or anything. But my taste in cars versus my mom's taste in cars are two very different things. I recently was looking at this 2001 Mustang V8 3-speed manual transmission. I'm like, that looks pretty, but it looks fun, but I don't know.
Hey, let me tell you something. You're only 18 once, whatever it is you are right now. Okay.
Yeah,
And it's funny because you say 2001 and my old brain goes, that's not old, but for you it
that's
is.
older than I am.
Yeah, it's a classic car for you. You
Yeah.
know, me, I hear my car has always been the 78 Trans Am, the Bandit car. I
Uh,
always wanted one. I'll never, ever be able to get one. And I mean, and the longer the time you go back and now the time is really gone, those cars are, you never find them. You know, Burt Reynolds, his car, they're getting down into the, you know, the hundreds, maybe less. I don't know. But if you're going to do something like that, I'm not telling you, I'm not going to override what you do. You get to
yeah,
make
no.
the, wait, do you get to make the decision?
Um, not really, but
Wait a minute.
I don't really know.
I'm going to advocate for you here. Hang on.
No, it's all right because
I'm kidding.
it's still too soon for me to really even be
Yeah. Well,
thinking
let me
about it
ask you.
because
You
I am
said
just in between so many different places right now.
as well. You got to get
Um,
yourself scheduled. You know, school is what? This is your first year at school, right?
yeah, I'm
All right.
freshman.
You get and with all this shit going on. I mean, right now, put it this way: if you get a really good deal on one, comes up, that's when you say, you know, we got to look at this thing.
Yeah,
But
I recently did that with a Jeep. I'm a really big Jeep guy. The two cars I love the most, one Jeeps, two old Mustangs. Um, but yeah, I'm a huge Jeep guy, and recently there was a good Jeep, great deal. But um, the problem about Jeeps is that they really hold their value. And so it's a good thing, but for someone who wants to buy one, it's not a good thing because even that 2003, which was a great deal, it was, I think, I don't even remember anymore, but it was a really good deal for all the off-road after parts it had, aftermarket parts. Um, but yeah,
what
I
happened? You know
also
what?
think I
You
might
know,
want to just get something like a daily because I need something a daily, but something that I could also have fun with. So
you know, I mean, you.
I'm in a little bit of a predicament.
Let's be honest. You're an 18-year-old dude. You don't want to be driving around in a, you know, a Miata. You know,
I mean,
well, you
maybe.
never well, if you really got to get around, you get it. But she posted a video,
Not a stock Miata. Not a stock Miata.
but she looks like she drives an SUV. The only reason I know that is because she posted a video from inside. She was talking about something and
Oh,
driving.
that SUV, that Lexus,
That's
it's
what
really good.
is it.
It is a really nice Lexus. Um, it's definitely fun.
But the best way to find something is stop looking for it. And that's when then you'll find the car that you always wanted. It'll just happen.
Yeah.
Yep. And then you have to buy it because the deal is too good. I can't let this go. But let's see what else we got. I tell you, we covered a lot. See, not bad for a guy. I tell you what, for a guy that you said you've never been like, I don't really do interviews. I bullshit with somebody. That's the way I do it. But you were rolling. You opened my eyes, a lot of things. And the thing I think I hope people, you know, when I start passing this around, hopefully people listen, is that they have to understand that, you know, it's not what we want. It's what you want. And when I say that, it's what the younger generation wants. If there's going to be a real future to rock and roll and not continuously looking to relive the past. And you said it. You literally nailed it in the first 5 minutes. Perfect. All right. Well, I guess you sure you got to get going now, right? So,
Yep.
all right. We'll talk again. I'll take out some snippets. Like I said, I'll tag. Well, on Twitter, I'll tag your mom. On Facebook, I'll tag you, and then I'll send you if you want a copy of this. I can download it, send it right to you, whatever. And like we can chit chat back and forth on Facebook. And if you ever want to do this again, don't ever be afraid to ask. You don't have to ask. Just whenever you want to do it. All right.
Of course. Thank you.
All right, Jaxon. It was really good talking to you.
Yeah, it was great talking to you too.
Happy New Year. Happy New Year to Mom. And that's it. Catch you next time. All right, everybody else, be good. We'll see you Wednesday on the year-end review. Goodbye to 2020. We can't get this over fucking fast enough.
Yep. All right. Thank you. Happy New Year.
You too, Matt. Appreciate it.